Hi, welcome back to Educator.com's AP Music Theory course. Today's lesson is on modulation to closely related keys. So the objectives for this lesson is first we're going to learn about closely related key relationships and what those constitute. And then we're going to look at how to modulate between these closely related keys with the common chord or the pivot chord technique. So closely related keys. There's a few ways to think about this. Let's say we're starting with C major as our home key. So we can look at all the scale steps of C. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So the keys that are closely related to C are basically the major chords in the key. So that gives us 4 and 5. And those keys relative minors. And of course, the relative minor of C itself. So if we're thinking about what keys are closely related to C major, we find that one of them is, first of all, A minor, because it's the relative of C major. And then we have F major and its relative D minor. And then we have G major and its relative E minor. And so let's look at the key signatures of all of these keys. So here is the key signature for C major or A minor. And then here is the key signature for F major or D minor. And finally, here is the key signature for G major or E minor. And so what we find is that from our home key of C major, the other way to think about the closely related keys are the keys that only differ in one accidental from the key signature, and they're, of course, relative majors and minors. So C major has no accidentals, so F major is close because it only adds one flat, and then G major is close because it only adds one sharp, and then, of course, the relative minors of those are all considered close. So in the end, we've got C major, and it's closely related to A minor, F major, D minor, G major, and E minor. And this will hold true for any key that we choose. So let's look at one more. What about, let's go down one to F major. So write the key signature again for F major, B flat. And let's write in the scale steps. And so we're going to take, of course, the tonic and its relative minor, which is D minor, and then we're going to take the 4 chord. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and the 5 chord. So we've got B flat major or G minor, and then C major or A minor. So we can make a similar diagram for F major. So on one side, we've got B flat major over here and C major over here, and then the relative minors, D, G, and A. And we can confirm the rule about the accidentals in the key signature by going up here and drawing them in. So F major has one flat, and then B flat major has two flats, and so does G minor. And then C major, of course, has no flats or sharps, and A minor. So this, again, adheres to this rule of differing by only one accidental from the home key of F major. Okay, and now let's put aside the idea of closely related keys for a second, and let's think about chords that are common to more than one key, and then we'll see how these two ideas relate to each other. So let's go back to our home key of C major, and let's just write in all the chords, triads for C major, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 diminished. So let's see. I'm just going to write them up here. C, E, G, D, F, A, E, G, B, F, A, C, G, B, D, A, C, E, and B, D, F. And so now we're going to look at another key. Let's take one of the closely related keys. So let's look at F major down here. So here's the key signature, and then F, A, C, G, B flat, D, A, C, E, B flat, D, F, C, E, G, D, F, A, and E, G, B flat. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so nothing new here. We're just looking at two closely related keys. And now we want to see which chords these two keys have in common. So let's see. So of course they both have this F major in common. So I'll star these chords. So they've got this F major chord in common. G minor has a B flat in it, so that can't be in common. And then here is a 3 chord, so that's in common. An A minor chord. This chord again has a B flat, so it can't be. Here's a C major chord, which they of course have in common, and a D minor chord that they have in common. So in C major, those would be the 1, the 2, the 4, and the 6. So what this means for modulation is that we can start to think about the context that we're in a given progression. Like let's say we're in C major and we've been using C major chord, of course, as a tonic chord. We can now start to think about switching and reinterpreting this C major chord, which is a 1, of course, in C major, as a C major chord in F, which would make it a 5. And then from there, we can go through and interpret the rest of the progression as if this was a 5 in F. So let's do that. So let's take a progression that begins in C major and start it with 1, of course. And let's look at this bass line. So we'll move to F, to G, and then back to C. So this is, of course, in C major going to be 1, 4, 5, 1. And let's write in the upper voices, G, C, E, A, F, and then G, B, D, and then G, C, E. And now we've seen that this C major chord here is common to both C major and F major. And in fact, in F major, it's the 5 chord. So from here out, we can establish a new context in which we are going to feel like we're in F major. And the way to do that is to just think about what sorts of harmonic progressions make sense. So, and this is the way to label this so it makes sense. So what happens is we've got 1, 4, 5, 1 in C, which then is reinterpreted as beginning on 5 in F. So if it's 5 in F, maybe what makes sense to do is to go to 1 in F, and then let's just do a 1, 4, 5, 1 in F as well. And maybe we'll make this a 5, 7 just to make it even stronger in F. So now we can use the same voice leading here. So A, C, F, and then we're moving to a B flat. So F, D, B flat, and then this is going to move to a 5, 7. So here is the B flat being tied over, and then let's see, E, well actually, probably should have moved the B flat down to G, and then the D down to B flat, and the F to E. And now this is going to resolve to F major. So this is one example of modulating with a common chord. So again, what happened is that we know that this C major chord here is 1 in C major and 5 in F. So at any point we can decide to pivot, so this is called a pivot chord, between these two keys by originally treating this chord in a context of C major and then all of a sudden treating it in a context of F major and using a progression in F that follows from it logically. Okay, let's do one more example of that. So let's plan out what our modulation is going to be. So let's see. So let's write the chords in C major again. F, A, C, G, B, D, A, C, E, B, D, F. And this time let's move from C major to A minor. So let's take a look at the chords in A. And of course the 5 is going to be a major chord. So 1, 2 diminished, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 7 is also going to be diminished. So now let's look at the chords we have in common. So of course, here's one, here's one. They're all going to be in common except for the ones that have the G sharp in them, of course. So C, D, F, A minor, and B diminished. So now that we know the chords that C major and A minor have in common, we can make a plan for how we're going to do this modulation. So let's begin with a simple progression in C major. So let's say we're going to go from C to G to C to A to F. So in C major, of course, this would be 1, 5, 1, 6, 4. And let's take a look at this last chord, the 4, and see where it appears in A minor, and we see that it's the major 6 chord. So let's reinterpret this chord as 6 in A minor, and then proceed from there. So let's say I'm going to go from 6 to now 4 in A minor to 5 to 1, just to make a cadence in A minor. So F is then going to move to D, E, and then to A. And so what's happening is this section here is again our pivot chord. So it was originally a 4 in C, and then we're just going to think about it as being a 6 in A and make sure that the rest of the progression makes sense given that, that line of thought. And now to realize the upper voices is nothing new. We just do what we've been doing. So keeping common tones and moving other voices as closely as possible. Of course, remembering to make the dominant a major chord. And here's our modulation from C major to A minor using the F major chord as a pivot chord. So it's a 4 in C and becomes a 6 in A. Okay, for our first example, a question might ask you to determine the closely related keys for a given key. So let's say we're given the key of B flat major, and we need to find the closely related keys. So we saw one way to do that, which is to write the key signature of the key and then look at the scale degrees. And of course we remember that in a major key it's the major chords that are going to be the keys that are closely related. So that means 1, 4, and 5, and their relative minors. So we can look at B flat major and its relative minor, which is G minor, and then here this is E flat major and its relative minor is C minor, and then here is F major and its relative minor is D minor. So then we can make our chart, which says that if B flat major is the home key, that on one side E flat and F, and then the relative minors of G, C, and D are completing these 6 closely related keys. Okay, for example 2, let's say we're given a minor key and asked to find the closely related keys. So what if we are given E minor? So let's do it the same way that we did the last one. So we'll write in the key signature and then E, F sharp, G, A, B, C, D. And now, of course, the first thing that we know is that E minor and its relative major, which is G major, is going to be the first closely related key. And then we need to find the rest of the major chords. So those happen to fall, when we're doing it in minor, we want to use the natural minor form of the scale. So this is 1, this is 2 diminished, this is 3, and then this is 4, this is minor 5, this is 6, and this is 7. So here's major 3, which was of course our G major, relative major, and then, 6 here. So here's the other one, C major, of course, and its relative, A minor, and then the major 7 chord, which is D major, and its relative minor, B minor. So to make our chart would be E minor, and then A minor and B minor, and then the relative majors, G major, C major, and D major. Okay, for example 3, let's find closely related keys using the method of key signatures. So let's say we are given the key of, what about E major? So we're given E major and we need to find the closely related keys. So what we can do is write out the key signature for E major, which is 4 sharps. And then we know that, first of all, automatically the relative minor is going to be a closely related key. So in the relative minor of E major, of course, if you just go down a minor third, is C sharp minor. And then we know that the other keys are going to only differ by one accidental. So there's going to be one that has 3 sharps instead of 4, F sharp, C sharp, G sharp. And then we know that 3 sharps is A major. And then the relative minor of that, again, is F sharp minor. And if you're not sure how to find the relative minor, you can either think about the 6th chord of the major key, which would be an F sharp minor chord, or just going down a minor third from A, which would be, of course, F sharp. And then we know that the other closely related key is going to have 5 sharps, so going up a sharp. So F sharp, C sharp, G sharp, D sharp, and A sharp. And then from our key signature knowledge, we know that this is going to be B major, and that the relative minor is going to be G sharp minor. And so I just wanted to demonstrate 2 ways to come up with closely related keys. And of course, you can use both of them in conjunction to double check things. So now we can make our chart, which had E major in the center, and A major on one side with 3 sharps, B major with 5 sharps, and then the associated, the relative minors. Okay, and for our 4th example, let's do an actual modulation exercise. So a question might ask you to modulate from, let's say, D minor to C major by using a pivot chord, or might call it a common chord. So this is the same technique we've been using. So of course, D minor and C major are closely related because they only differ in one accidental. C major has none, and D minor has 1 flat. So the first thing we should do is think about which chord is going to be our pivot chord. So let's look at the chords in C major. So C, E, G, D, F, A, E, G, B, F, A, C, G, A, and B. And then let's write up the chords in D minor. So D, F, A, E, G, B flat, F, A, C, let's see, G, B flat, D, A, C sharp, E, B flat, D, F, and then finally the leading tone chord, C sharp, E, G. Okay, so looking for common chords, we see that D minor is of course common to both, as is F major, and what else? A minor, and that's it. So we've got a D minor chord and an F major chord. So let's go ahead and choose D minor, which is 2 in C. So our pivot chord, we can choose ahead of time, is D minor, which in C major is 2, and in D minor is the tonic. So this is going to be our switch. And now let's write a chord progression that involves C major going to a 2 and then reinterpreting that as 1 in D minor. So of course we're probably going to start on C, and we'll need to establish C, so why don't we just move immediately to 5 and back to 1. And now let's move to a 4 to do some subdominant harmony, to a 2. And now here we can immediately begin to reinterpret. So in D minor, this is going to be 1. So let's just move it from 1 right to 5, and then back to 1. So now let's do the upper voices. So G, C, E, G, B, D, G, C, E, moving to 4 chord, and then to 2. And now we're going to think of this as being in D minor, so we're moving this D minor chord to this dominant chord in D, so A in the bass line to D, so A, C sharp, E, and then A, D, F. And that gives us our modulation. So again, it's important to note how we planned this out originally. So we looked at the 2 keys and chose a pivot chord in advance and looked at the relationship between the two and set up a harmonic progression that makes sense, which is the only way to achieve this modulation smoothly. Pivot. All right, thanks for watching Educator.com's AP Music Theory course. See you next time.